This happened while I was in college, 5 years ago. I was a transfer student and was 21 at the time. I was set up to be living in a building that was for students 21 or older and moved in a week and a half before classes began. This school was in northern Michigan, so when I first arrived, campus was basically dead. I mostly kept to myself, but was friendly with the few people in my building, namely one guy named Khalil, an exchange student from Lebanon. He seemed nice enough, though there was a distinct language barrier, so things would become easily lost in translation. Our RD and RA, resident director and resident assistant, made everyone who had moved in have a meeting to go over the basic rules and whatnot. At the end of the meeting, as I'm leaving the rec room, Khalil suddenly puts his arm up on the wall in front of me, almost clotheslining me. Caught off guard, I was peeved and creeped at this aggressive move. He begins explaining that he would like to be my friend and would like to go out for dinner to get to know me a bit. He worded it very oddly, so I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be a date or just a friendly invitation, but I attributed it to his bad English. Like an imbecile, I felt cornered physically and socially. I'm awful with confrontation and can often be too nice, so of course I agreed. He meant right then and there, however, and immediately said, "I'll get us a taxi and we go now." My introverted side was upset that my night of drinking and unpacking in solitude was disrupted, so I was not very excited. If only I knew that listening to that inner introvert could have saved me from an unsettling experience. 10 minutes later, we're getting into this taxi, and as I'm entering, I feel a sense of dread. I'm thinking to myself, I barely know this guy, and Hudson's, the restaurant, is a couple of miles away. We'll be stranded out there with this stranger if it gets weird. As we drive, my guard raises ever higher and higher. He wants to know everything about me, throwing questions out rapid fire. My age, dating history, physical preferences in men, religion, family, everything. I'm thinking, fuck, this is gonna be so awkward. I wanted the night to be over before we even got to the restaurant. At the restaurant, we both look at the menu for a bit. The waiter comes and takes my order. Salad, small and quick to eat to get out of there faster. And then the waiter asks what Khalil wants. He says, "Oh, no, I'm not hungry. I just want to watch her." What the fuck? Why would you ask someone out for dinner if you didn't want to eat? Why the hell do you just want to watch someone else do things? I was horrified. All my family was in the lower peninsula of Michigan, 8 hours away. I had no friends up here, and the only local numbers I had were my RA and RD. As I speed eat through my salad, Khalil watches me, now starting to talk about himself. He tells me about how he has serious anger problems and was looking for a woman to help calm him, but still be a submissive traditional wife. I was trying to hide the horror and uneasiness as I nodded along. He continued explaining how he was known for his massive temper back home, and how his brothers always had to stop him from doing these awful things. At this point, red flags were blinding my vision. Yeah, it's about time to end this. I finish my food and tell him to get a taxi back to campus. I intentionally sat in the front. I wasn't allowing the possibility of any physical contact. When we get to campus, we get in the building and I say a quick thank you and haul ass back to my room. Door locked, I get into my sweats and try to chalk it up to a weird experience. I vow to avoid Khalil from then on. Around 12:30 a.m. though, I hear a knock on my door. I was just watching Netflix and took out my earbuds to make sure I was hearing right. The knocking continues. Not a courteous, gentle knock, but a closed-fist, furious pounding. I'm petrified, and making as little noise as possible. I get to the door and look out the peephole. I see Khalil. My room was at the very end of a long hallway. All rooms around me empty at this point, with the door outside of my room leading to a parking lot surrounded by woods. Knowing how isolated I was, I slink away from the door, making zero noise and just waiting for the knocking to stop. About a minute later, it does. I hear him growl through the door. "I know you're in there. I'll wait till you're ready." My eyes widened in horror. I felt a mixture of rage and panic, but decided that confronting him then wouldn't be very smart. I quietly decided to try and watch Netflix until I could fall asleep. Honestly, I have no idea how long he waited out there. The next morning, when I finally emerge from my room, I find a couple of pages taped to my door. Oh God. 3 handwritten pages from Khalil explaining his feelings for me and his intentions of taking me as his wife. I went straight to my RA and explained everything that happened. She agreed to meet with Khalil herself to explain how inappropriate he was being and to tell him to leave me alone. Of course, he didn't. Notes kept coming. He kept showing up around me dozens of times a day, and I became pretty much trapped in my room hiding from this psycho. It lasted for all of 8 days, but when classes began, Khalil disappeared. I was told he dropped out and moved back to Lebanon. I found it eerie how he just suddenly vanished. Had he come here solely to find a wife? I'll never know. But Khalil, let's not meet ever again. I once met up with an old friend of mine, male and 22. A friend I had known for a few years prior to the meetup in November of 2017. I had actually met this person on a dating site. However, as time went on, the relationship between us became strictly platonic. There were no red flags, my gut did not warn me, and so I completely trusted this person. We met up in town behind a bus station, on a grassy hill surrounded by trees and a tall wall. Our meeting was just to have a smoke, get a little high, and have a nice catch-up. The meetup was fine and all. I'd actually started smoking weed a few months before, so I was still relatively new to it. He had brought something new for me to try, purple haze. I wasn't at all anxious about trying it, as I completely trusted this person and would never believe that he would lie to me. He had packed a full blunt for me, but I only managed to smoke about a quarter of it. We spoke during this time, about work, our previous relationships, just random stuff. About half an hour later, I started to feel extremely lightheaded and anxious. I suddenly had this strange feeling where I did not feel comfortable at all, and I really wanted to go home. When I asked him if I could, he offered to take me there. I said, "No, it's okay." He offered again. "Please, let me take you home. You'll be safe with me. I wouldn't hurt you." I shook my head and said, "No, thank you. I can take myself home." When I started to walk away, though, I felt like I was walking on a cloud. My head became dizzy, and my eyesight became blurry. I had never felt like this before, and in time, I started to panic. As we made our way down the hill towards the bus station, I was relieved, as there were a lot of people around, so if anything happened, I was sure someone would step in. I became extremely terrified of him. I had this horrible feeling in my gut that told me to get away from him, and when I got to the bus station, I told him I would call my taxi here and go home. His tone was no longer nice, but instead very stern. "I'm going to take you home now." He began to pull at my jacket. I told him no and that I was going home on my own. He pulled me harder, and I fell against him. He pulled me into him and whispered that I didn't need to be scared of him, but I was so terrified. At this point, I started to feel very paranoid, and I couldn't see properly at all. I pushed him away from me and rubbed my eyes, called out for a taxi. He tried to pull my phone from me and started yelling in my face. "Do you ever listen? I said I'm taking you home." I noticed a few people had stopped and asked if I was okay. All I remember was that I wanted to go home. A kindly lady called a taxi for me and waited with me, made sure I was okay, and helped me in as well. During the time I waited for the taxi, he kept trying to coax me to come to his car with him, but the lady that looked after me told him to go home and that she was going to take me instead. So he left. When I got home, I gave the taxi driver the money and told him to keep the change as well. I didn't want to wait around. I just wanted to get into my bed because at the time that was the only place I would feel safe and be safe from harm. That evening, I laid in my bed for 5 hours straight, just staring at the ceiling. I don't really remember if I thought about anything or if my mom came in at any time. I just remember lying in bed doing nothing until the paranoia and the sickly feeling just began to wear off. I remember looking at my phone, seeing I had 32 missed calls from him, 10 voicemails, and 50 plus messages. The messages were all weird. He had sent about 20 asking where I was and when I got home. In one of the voicemails, he admitted how he had this fantasy of taking me home whilst drugged up and tying me up. He wanted to blindfold me, and he wanted me to submit myself to him. I freaked out and blocked him on all social media. Instagram, Snapchat, Discord. I blocked his number as well. Before the blocking, though, I told him if he ever contacted me again, then I would call the police right away. I heard nothing from him for about a month, until I received a text from an unknown number asking me how I was. I hadn't given my number out to anyone, so instead I ignored it. I then received another message a few minutes later, saying they missed me, and that they would see me again soon. I asked who they were. No reply. Nothing. I've since spoken to some friends with regards to my story, and all of them have explained that weed would never make anyone feel this way, and a lot of them think I was given spice, not weed. It looks very similar, but the effects are a lot stronger and more dangerous. In the summer of 2015, I worked at a university in a small southern town. I lived a few miles away from campus in a 2-bedroom house with a roommate. My schedule was pretty rigid, same routine every day. I went to class in the morning, work in the afternoon, and got home at around 9 p.m. One Thursday night, I arrived home at the usual time and noticed that there was an old pickup truck idling at the yield sign across the street from my house. I didn't know the make or model, but I could tell it was beat up, peeling paint, rust, dents. It looked really out of place in our neighborhood. Most people there drove nice modern cars, so this thing just stood out like a sore thumb. The streets were completely deserted as well. It clearly wasn't waiting for other cars to pass by. I thought maybe the driver was just texting or something, but since my roommate wasn't home yet, I didn't want to leave the safety of my own vehicle. I'm a petite woman who doesn't carry pepper spray anymore, so I try to be aware of my surroundings. I pulled into my driveway and just sat there, staring at the truck and waiting for it to leave. Eventually, it did. It pulled away slowly and made its way out of the neighborhood towards the main road. When it was out of sight, I went inside, locked the door behind me, and quickly made myself some dinner. By 11 p.m., my roommate still hadn't come home yet, and I was folding laundry, listening to podcasts in my bedroom. I'd forgotten all about the trucks by then. Suddenly, though, the lights went out. That spooked me because normally our power didn't shut off unless there was bad weather. That night, though, was clear as a bell, so I immediately called my roommate and asked where he was. He told me he was already on his way home and would be there in about 5 minutes. Relieved, I just told him to step on it and hung up. No reason to freak out over a small power outage, right? He'd be there soon enough, and then we could figure it out together. I walked into the living room to wait for him. Our front door had a little diamond-shaped window in it, which I always hated. I stood on my tiptoes and looked out to see if our neighbor's power was out as well. I was surprised to see, though, that it wasn't. Even the streetlight right near our front yard was still on. Weird. Perhaps I had somehow blown a fuse? Just as I considered making a trip to the basement to reset the breakers, I received a text message from my mom. I don't remember what it was about, but it only took me a few seconds to answer it. After I did, I looked up out the window again. To my shock and utter surprise, there was now a man standing underneath the streetlight. He hadn't been there before, and instantly, I got a bad feeling. He was middle-aged and about 6 feet tall, with a pot belly and little round glasses, unkempt hair, old sneakers. His white t-shirt and blue jeans were absolutely filthy. He looked like he'd been working on a car or something. He was mechanic dirty, you know, and he had this awful smug expression on his face, except I had never seen him before. Still in shock at actually seeing someone out there, I didn't move. Luckily, he couldn't see me because the inside of my house was pitch dark, but to my absolute horror, he started heading straight for me, not walking quickly or with purpose, just casually shuffling towards the house, in such a way that if someone were to pass by, they wouldn't even realize what he was up to. He even glanced around a few times, as if making sure nobody else was watching. Inch by inch, he made his way into the yard. This guy was coming to get me. I was sure of it. I was starting to shake. I think it's worth mentioning that my dog is very people-oriented and usually goes bananas when he hears someone outside. This time, though, he was silent. He had no idea there was a man approaching, even though I was staring at him right through the window. When the man was about halfway to the porch, my roommate's car finally rounded the bend and turned onto our street. As soon as those headlights lit him up, the man turned to look and clearly recognized the approaching vehicle. My roommate and I both saw his face. He recognized the car. In his haste to get away, he nearly stepped in front of it and got run over. My roommate swerved into the driveway, scrambled out, and charged into the house. He didn't even speak to me. He just grabbed the axe out of our utility closet and went back outside to confront the man. But he was long gone. We called the police and the power company, and they both sent someone to check things out. The police didn't find anything. The repairman reset the box on the pole near our house. Apparently, the switch had been flipped, which was why our house, and only our house, was without electricity. I asked the repairman if there was any way that a person could have been responsible for that, but he wouldn't give me a straight answer. And the following day, we went on a camping trip that lasted all weekend. If the man came back, we never knew. And after that, I refused to be home alone. If my roommate wasn't around when I got off work, I killed time at a local bar until he got back. We both moved away soon after. I never saw the man nor the truck again, but sometimes I wonder how long he'd been watching our house, and what might have happened if my roommate hadn't been on his way home that night. Currently, I attend a university in a small town here where there's many college students, but it's hard to really build the connection. My friends and I decided to try Tinder for a few weeks because we wanted to meet some guys. After talking to some, I found a guy named Josh who had just graduated with a degree in computer engineering and seemed really funny. I knew deep down inside I wouldn't have any romantic relations with him, so I kept it very casual. At some point, I told him I was deleting Tinder, so we exchanged numbers and continued texting for a few days. Slowly, I started losing interest in him and stopped replying to his messages. Occasionally, after that, he would text me, but I just wouldn't reply. Yeah, I know, not so nice. Eventually, I moved on from him, though, and planned to go to another guy's house one night. My friends wanted to meet up earlier that night, so I stopped at the gas station to buy us some snacks. While there, I got a text from Josh asking me why I was at a certain gas station with a boy. I was super confused, because I was alone. I asked if he was there too. He didn't reply, so I brushed off his comment and went on with my night. And fast forward a few days later, I became curious about his comment and texted him back about it. He disregarded my question as if nothing had happened and continued conversation as normal. We continued texting and agreed to meet up at his place to hang out. So before class one day, I decided to head over to his house. I met him, and honestly, he looked entirely different from his pictures. It was like he was a catfish. I was definitely confused, but decided to give him another chance. He later admitted the picture was 2 years old. After talking for a little bit, Things got heated and we started undressing. Then, things happened. After we were done and just laying in bed, he started telling me about his cool inventions and how he was able to program the lights in his room to his phone. Then I asked him what else he was able to do using his softwares. He mentioned how he was able to access my phone and watch me through my camera a few weeks back. I just wanted to make sure you weren't a catfish, so I looked through your camera on your phone to watch you, Josh said. I was so mortified, but I had to act natural so I could find out what other things he was capable of doing. So when I was at the gas station that night, were you tracking me? I asked him. He proceeded to admit to me that he'd been able to access my messages, and that's how he knew I was meeting a guy that night. Mind you, I'm naked in this bed with this guy while he's telling me this. I proceeded to tell him that I had to go to class and attempted to put my clothes on. He then persuaded me to continue whatever we had going on, but the look on my face clearly stated I was ready to go. He continued to insist, but I said, I think we're done here, and got up to finish putting my clothes on. John then asked if I wanted to meet at my house on 24th Street next time. Baffled by this statement, I quickly told him that I don't live there anymore. Josh called me a liar. Don't lie to me. I know you live at this address. I persisted that I moved and haven't been at that address for a few months now. Creeped out by his comments, I started putting my clothes back on, while he proceeded to tell me it was incredibly easy for anyone to access my IP address. This wasn't anything serious. I couldn't believe he was trying to convince me that his actions weren't severe after just admitting to spying and tracking me. After convincing him I was late for class, I quickly left his place without raising suspicions that I was creeped out. Later that week, he texted me that he'd fallen for my personality and wanted to quickly meet again. As soon as I received that message, though, I told him I never wanted to see him anymore, then blocked his number in hopes of forgetting him forever. It's been a few months since the incident, and so far he hasn't tried to contact me. Hopefully, it stays that way. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. As always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any criticisms on how I can make the videos better, or any thoughts about it in general, please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. As well, in the description below the video, there will be links to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, Twitter, and Twitch accounts. If you guys want to chat, please be sure to send me a message on any of those. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Please be forewarned, though, that I tend to go on Facebook less than the others, so it may take me a little bit longer to respond to you. If you want to send in a story, or you have a story that you'd like to be read, please be sure to take a look at the description and send me a message on any one of those sites. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the name of the story if it has one, the theme of the story if it has one as well, and how you would like to be credited in the video the story appears in, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. And please be sure to include as much detail as you are comfortable with, and make sure to follow proper grammar at least a little bit. That way it will be easier for me to read, and it will also be long enough to put into a video. If you guys are curious about the music used in the video, it's always listed in the description in the order which it appears, and I have links to the artists as well. I usually use Doblato Studios and Miyuji, so that's usually what you're going to find there. If you're curious about the art in the video, my art guy Alan always does all of my art for the channel. He's a very good friend of mine, and I have links to all of his social media as well, so if you like his stuff, be sure to check him out. He does commissions as well, I'm pretty sure, so if you like it, you can definitely get some good quality products from him. I don't think there's too much new updates today, other than the fact that I'm very excited for the PlayStation 5 coming out, and I just ordered Pikmin 3 on the Switch, so hopefully that gets here soon. I've been waiting like 3 years for that because nobody bought a Wii U. So yeah, that's my news for now. Be sure to let me know how you guys are doing as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.